Maruchan superfans are everywhere. From the busy moms who want to deliver maximum flavor in a flash to dorm room diners who want to put some slurp in their step. There are a ton of copycats you could use. But if you want to bless your bowl, there's only one true Maruchan. Whether you choose instant lunch, ramen bowls, yakisoba, or restaurant quality gold, Maruchan is the only ramen worth obsessing over. Smiles for all. Maruchan. See what all the ramen hype is about at maruchan.com.
'Tis the season to shine with H&M. Discover the holiday collection and find fashionable pieces for your wardrobe or for under the tree. Get inspired and dazzle with this year's glam. From tuxedo styles, bow detailed pieces, impressive prints, and more. From unforgettable looks to unforgettable gifts. With fashion finds to home decor, find it all at H&M. Treat your loved ones and yourself this season. Shop in-store or at hm.com.
This podcast is brought to you by drunkmummysobermummy.com and made in association with HelloSundayMorning.org, changing the world's relationship with alcohol, one Sunday at a time. This podcast is proudly sponsored by Lyre's. Lyre's produce simply the finest alcohol-free spirits the world has ever seen. Listen out later on the show for your Sober October discount code.
Oh, the kettle's boiled.
Great. Perfect timing.
Should we get started then?
I'm Victoria Vanstone.
I'm Lucy Good.
And this is Sober Awkward. Right, Lucy, over to you.
Thanks, Vic. So whatever stage you're at on your sober journey, and Vic and I are at completely different stages, you'll know that life without booze can at times feel, what do you reckon?
Awkward. Lucy and I invite you to listen to our podcast where we discuss the realities of sobriety, the good, the bad, the ugly, and the cringingly embarrassing. Our honest and open chats will help you discover what it really means to be sober.
Yes, we're here like a dodgy bottle of port from your nan's drink cabinet to take the edge off sobriety. And together we can learn how to feel the awkward and do it anyway.
You're looking rather ravishing today, Lucy.
Why, thank you so much, Victoria. Yeah, I'm feeling good. Had a day off work today. Which was
nice.
Yeah, it was really nice, and managed to even have a shower.
Oh, yeah, I thought you were smelling pretty fresh.
Yeah, you're looking a little bit tired, bit scraggly. You all right, darling?
Yeah, I know. I'm looking a bit rough around the edges. I've just got back from being at a bloody theme park.
Oh, God, in this heat, how awful.
I know. Crying kids, burgers, roller coasters.
Sounds like hell on
arguments.
earth.
Yeah.
Oh, God, no wonder you look like you've been
That's
to hell and
parenthood
back.
summed up in a 12-hour session. The various stages.
Oh, no, you are good. I remember the theme park days.
Yeah.
Glad they're over.
Glad they're over, yeah.
You know, when you go on those roller coasters and things, you come off feeling really sick and you think, I
that's
used
exactly
to be
what I
able
did.
to do this.
I'm going to post a photo on my Instagram page later of me on this spinning round thing where I just went round for ages and ages. But it was actually better than being with the children.
Anything to get away from them.
Yeah, even risk of death was better at some point today. Yeah, so we're excited. We've got our second guest on today, haven't we? So
We have, yeah. So we've been sort of briefing each other on this because we've got him waiting in the wings. We've just got to press the admit button to let him in. But we just want it. We're going to try really hard not to talk over him.
yeah, not to interrupt him like we always do.
Yeah, we're terrible. We can't stop talking. And he's a really great person, Sober Dave.
Yeah.
And he's got loads of really good stuff to say. So we're going to actually try really hard to let him say it.
But we don't know which button to press. Which is this one? Is it this one, Lucy? Wait a second.
I don't know, Alan.
It's that one there.
Oh, Jesus. Sorry, Alan. Oh, he slammed the door.
Oh, God. I was all relaxed and now
Quick,
I'm on edge.
We better be quiet. We've got to
Press
start.
the
We've got to
button.
look professional. I'm going to press it now.
So today we're excited to welcome our second guest onto the Sober Awkward podcast, Sober Dave.
Dave is one of the first people I followed when I started on this sobriety path, and he's been a huge inspiration to me. His posts and podcasts, One for the Road, are a refreshing and often vulnerable look at sobriety and mental health. His honesty and transparency means you learn alongside him and get to grasp what it's truly like being a sober man in this booze-saturated world. Over the last few years, Dave and I have become mates from afar, and it's been a pleasure getting to know this lovely and inspiring man. In that short time, he has become one of the most prominent sober voices out there, speaking out about his battle at events, schools, and online. Dave has gone from rock bottom to becoming a sober coach, a major influencer, and his story is now helping destigmatise alcoholism in society. Welcome, Dave.
Hi. Can we just leave it there then? Because I'm quite happy with that.
Yeah, I was quite proud of that. I thought you'd enjoy that sort of very short ass kissing session.
You've got to live up to it now, though.
I know. I'm
Dave.
glad that you received my email yesterday where I wrote all that down. So thank you.
Yeah. We were going to start with Dave to say to you that you were among your people here because me and Lucy, I know that your nickname when you were a drinker was Glugsy, and Lucy was the glugger and I was the gulper. So we've all got very similar nicknames.
God, it's terrible, isn't it? But I used to be really proud of it. Did you?
Oh God, yeah. Like we've talked quite a few times. Like my little party trick was downing a Stella in one. And what was yours, Vic?
Mine was a pint of snake bite and black, which was the Luton record.
Why did that not surprise me? Actually.
And snake bite black, for people in Australia or anyone that doesn't know it, I think it's cider mixed with beer with a shot of Ribena or something, isn't it? Yeah. I don't know why they bothered putting the Ribena in it,
I don't
honestly.
know what that was about either.
No. What was that thing called a baby's brain as well? That was a shot of some sort, wasn't it?
I don't know that one.
Yeah, Sex on the Beach.
I don't know. I've never heard of that.
The baby's brain, maybe I just made that up. I don't know.
That doesn't sound right to me.
How are you, Dave? You all right? How's England today? You got nice weather?
Yeah, it's all right, actually. It's quite mild today. Do you miss it?
No.
Okay, fair enough.
I won't say that for our listeners. I mean, funnily enough, I miss pubs. Like, I just imagine an English pub with low gabled ceilings and a kind of rosy-cheeked barman behind the bar. Open fire, you know, your own personal metal keg and all those sort of things. It's the pub culture that I miss, but obviously I wouldn't miss that anymore. But what about you, Lucy?
It's quite interesting, actually. When we think about things from the past, when it comes to drinking, we fantasize it, don't we?
Absolutely.
And what you've done there, you've painted the perfect picture with your cardigan on and your rocking chair in a pub by the fire, rocking and telling your tales of the past, of your drinking expeditions. And in fact, it's quite often the opposite of that, isn't it?
It's very similar. Yeah, no, it's exactly what you say. And it's similar because we had the chat with William Porter, who you're friends with as well, aren't you? And he does actually, I think he uses that phrase, fantasize. That's what we do as heavy drinkers. We fantasize about how wonderful it will be to have that drink. And it is exactly the same. That is how Vic and I think of England. Yeah. And then when we do go back, which we obviously haven't for a while because of COVID, we land at Heathrow Airport and think, oh, yeah. It's like this, isn't it?
There's always someone fighting over a trolley at Heathrow. I always land and just go, oh, God, here we go. Fights over trolleys. Then you get on the M25.
At the airport, but...
I know. You get on the M25 and sit in traffic for half an hour and then get some crap fish and chips. No, we love England, though, Dave. We do love
I like the fish and chips in England.
No, I'm joking about
that. Was below the belt.
Sorry.
Below the belt. English fish and chips are good.
Yeah, Australian ones are shit, so yeah. We've levelled out the playing field.
Upset people. Careful what you say. We've got Australian listeners.
Yeah, sorry, everybody.
Oh, dear.
The rating's gone down straight away, but that's good for my podcast, right?
Yeah, it'll push you forward. We're just going to tell our listeners a little bit about why we want to do this podcast today with you, Dave. Just bear with us.
Okay, the reason we wanted to have you on the podcast today, Dave, is so you can tell us a little bit about your own personal relationship with alcohol and help us get an idea of how this journey is different for men.
Yeah, Lucy and I have experienced stay-at-home drinking, binge drinking and mummy wine culture. So today we want to hear about recovery from the male perspective, how it differs, and if you think it's more difficult to talk about addiction as a man.
We'd also like to pry a little into your marriage, if we may, since you've been very open about how alcohol affected your relationship and how sobriety has changed it for the better on many levels. And by the way, we love your wife too. So a big shout out to Limitless M. Vic actually suggested I listen to because I'm not really a podcast listener because I'm so busy chatting on my own podcast. I don't get time to listen to anyone else's. But Vic suggested I listen to your podcast, Dave, that you did with your wife, Em. And it was incredible. It was such an emotional but just brilliant listen.
It was so raw and honest and open. I just love that about you, Dave. It's just amazing that you can be so honest with your listeners and with your wife, I guess, as well. What we want our listeners to take away from this podcast today is to know there are people like you that have struggled that are now thriving. Dave is a perfect example of how personal evolution is a possibility for everyone.
Yep, we've all changed. We've evolved a little bit, maybe Vic, not so much. And giving up drinking has allowed us to grow in so many unexpected ways. None of us are hiding in our bedrooms hungover anymore. Like Dave, we're out and about. Well, a little bit less of the out for me.
Yes, you're still hiding in a cave like a hermit.
I like hiding in caves and under rocks. But we're out talking about our sobriety. I do come out and talk about it once every 2 weeks because we want to help others. And we hope that our stories will help men and women understand their relationship with alcohol and then transform it.
At Sober Awkward, one of our mottos is fucked up but trying to do better. And we hope Dave's story will inspire you to make some changes, feel less alone, and help you understand that asking for help is not a weakness, it's a strength.
So press pause, go and make a cuppa, then find a cosy spot on the couch and relax, because this is going to be a good one.
So, Dave, there we go. Tell us a little bit about your relationship with alcohol. Where did it all start?
Well, it all started when I was around, we quite often say around 13, 14 years old, don't we?
Yeah, it's often that age, yeah.
Yeah, and I was actually quite a sort of a good kid growing up in what looked like the perfect family setup, like Sunday dinners, the carpenters playing in the background, Dad in the garage, mending something on his bike,
nice.
and, the smell of the roast coming from the kitchen and that. And but then it started to go wrong in my early teens, and we moved area, and I had to start secondary school in the second year, which was horrific for me because it was quite a rough school. And I remember standing in the classroom thinking, I'm really outside my comfort zone here. But Mum and Dad were arguing a lot. And then one day I got up and there was a letter on the kitchen table from my mum. And she had written that she had left, and I didn't know quite what to make of it. It was just, Dave, to let you know that I've left your father. We're not happy anymore, and I'll be in touch. And then shortly after that, my dad met someone else, and I felt incredibly rejected. And I started getting into the wrong crowd. I suppose to be accepted in some way, So I started drinking up the shops, asking adults to buy us beer and stuff from the off licence. And then I remember I had a tattoo done in a tattoo place in Tooting. And the guy's Barry Lorraine, right? And he had a Stetson hat on. He looked like Clint Eastwood in a film. And you would never get a tattoo done there in the morning because his hands were shaking so much because he was an alcoholic.
You know at that point things aren't going well, don't you, when you're having a tattoo done?
No, I know. And it was ironic because you were going there when he was on his whiskies and lager chasers or the other way around, and had this tattoo done. And I remember rolling my sleeve up, walking around, puffing my chest out, going, yeah, I'm hard. I'm like 14 and I drink and smoke and I've got a tattoo now. And it was the worst tattoo I've ever seen in my life.
What was
like
it?
A skull with a snake going through it. It was
classic. It was classic.
It's got to be better than mine, Dave. I've got a tattoo on my foot which says, I like jumping.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Well, that made me feel better already. Jesus.
Yeah, so, yeah. Carry on.
Like Popeye with an anchor on it or something. But yeah.
Yeah, no. It just says I like jumping.
okay then.
Yeah.
But the thing is, in those days, you know, Vic, because you're older than me, but you could go in the pubs without ID, right? And there was a pub not far from us called the Skinner's Arms, and we started going in there, and we were drinking with the adults, you know, and we felt like all grown up, and you go in there for a couple of quid and get drunk. And quite often we would get into school with a hangover, but it's all a laugh then, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I was really into my sport, into my football, and I was quite a good footballer. So I played probably 3 or 4 times a week. I was super fit. Drinking never really affected me because, you know, then with hangovers, you just get up and get on with it. And that carried on in my 20s, really. But it was only in my very, very late 20s, I suppose, I started going to a local pub called the New Town, and it was a young's pub. So it had the old spit and sawdust bar around one side and then the saloon bar around the other. And it was like a class thing. Now, all the builders went round it, which was me. You know, go in there and they'd be, all right, my son, do you want a beer, son?
Oh God,
And
yeah,
the
that
other
really
side
takes
of
me
it-
back.
Yeah, classic.
Yeah, I love those days.
Yeah, those are the days
and
where the hangovers dried up with that fry up the next day, weren't
Yeah.
they? Those were the
that's it.
days.
And round the other side was the Axminster carpet and the solicitors, estate agents drinking wine, you know, so it was a completely different vibe around the other side, and it was like a them and us thing. But I started going in there quite a lot, and I used to order light and lagers, right? Because you remember in the old days it'd be light and bitter.
Yes, I'd forgotten about those. I haven't thought about that for ages.
Yeah, and barley
The reason
wine.
I ordered light and lagers is because he used to pour more than half a pint of lager, so I was getting with the bottle more than a pint. So it showed that I was already bloody greedy with it. But I
Yeah.
used to drink about 6, 7 pints in an hour and a half.
Wow.
Yeah, that's quick. That's Glugsy behaviour right there.
Absolutely. But the more I got accepted in the pub, the more I spent my time in there. So it was stopped being like a few drinks after work. It would be, I'm going in there to do the session.
Yeah, that's really interesting, Dave, because I'd just really forgotten about that. It's like when you said about being accepted into a pub, it is a bit like that in England and possibly over here in Australia. I was always a parent when I lived here, but I know the English pub scene is that you have a pub, don't you? You have a pub that's your pub.
Local.
Yeah.
You have
I'm
a
going down
local.
local.
Yep, and you are accepted into it. And it's almost like not a gang's probably not the right word, but it's
It is
almost
like a
another
gang.
family.
Yeah, it is like another
It's another
family,
family.
yeah.
No wonder it can become such an important part of our lives, especially so young. And as you were going through, Dave, this experience that was you were struggling to handle, and you weren't able to find yourself and work out who you were because everything was moving under your feet at such a young age. And then you find this space where you're accepted and welcomed. No wonder you wanted to keep going in there. That just really has brought back so many memories of my drinking days in England and it being like that.
I remember I used to start on one side of the pub with the lawyers and the doctors and all that sort of thing, and I'd always end up round the back. Yeah, round the dodgy side.
With one of the doctors or the lawyers?
Yeah.
No.
No, she ended up on the dodgy side with one of the dodgy people.
Someone like Dave.
But no,
so what happened next, Dave? Yeah, what happened then?
Well, what happened is I'd met someone on a lad's holiday in Cos. Do you remember Cos?
Oh, yeah.
It was a lad's holiday, and I met a head rep for Grecian Holidays out there, and we sort of fell in love really quickly, and she was still working out there. But when she come back, she moved in with me, and then it wasn't long before we rented this nice house in this posh road, and she fell pregnant. But I was still going to the pub. It was part of my culture, you know, and she didn't drink, ironically. But George was born, and when that happened, I should have been more responsible and stay at home a bit more, but I didn't. And I reacted to it in a little way because I was like, I don't know what was going on with me at the time, but I was drinking more. And after couple of years, it didn't work out, and it was a really, really difficult decision for me to make. And this is raw because I haven't really talked about this actually, but I thought if George calls me dad, I would find it really hard to leave. So I had to make the decision with what do I want in my life, and it was a really difficult decision to make actually. And we separated, and because now what I did there though was I thought, right, if this happens, I've got to completely be that dad that's always there for him, although I don't live with him, and I was and always have been up to today, you know. And we had the same rules together as separated parents, but I never let him be spoiled because it wasn't her way in that. And, you know, he's been the best man at my wedding, and his mum I got on really well with still. So it all worked out for the best. But what happened after that was I literally went on a mission. And my 30s was literally mad. Like, Sunday sessions, I would be waiting at the door at midday for the landlord to open the door, and I'd be the first one in. And they were in the days that you'd smoke in pubs, you know, so you'd walk in and, you know, you'd smell the horrible stale fag smell from the night before. But, I mean, I'm going to paint the picture of this pub, and you're either going to love it or hate it. But
we're going to be salivating.
I'm salivating about the smell of the smoke. Yeah, and all that beer soaked into the carpet over the years. Used to love that.
It's very nostalgic for Lucy and I over in Australia.
Well, it's going to go on, and you're going to feel even more like you're going to miss it. But and then in those days, you used to in this pub they would have the seafood man come round and put seafood on the bar.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and then the nuts. Well, we all know the theory on the peanuts on the bar, don't we?
Yes, little urine in it, isn't it? Lots of
urine.
That's
it, where men don't wash their bloody hands, and then they pick a handful of nuts out of the thing.
Not very COVID safe.
No,
not now. But then it was one of those family pubs. So there was a guy called Keith Gravitt who would come with his wife and kids, and they would sit there, and they did lovely roast dinners in there, and also they did a meat raffle about 3:00 because the dad of the landlord was an old butcher, and this meat raffle you would see about 5:00 all these drunken people walking down the road with a leg of lamb over their shoulder, and you know, and sometimes I wanted 3 times, and I was like juggling it all the way home. And it was that kind of pub, but the more it went on, the more I was doing the session from midday till 10:30 at night, because I thought, what's the point going home? You know, and there was a whole different crowd in the evening, but by then I was absolutely plastered, you know.
It's interesting, Dave, that you talk about that point in your relationship where you became a father, and because me and Lucy talk a lot about the transition between party girl to motherhood, and it's very interesting to hear that it is difficult for men as well, because actually that's an area that's never ever talked about as well, isn't it? We say, look, it's so hard to go from being that person that's out all the time to suddenly being at home stuck with a baby, and suddenly you've got all of these responsibilities. No wonder, like you and I and Lucy, we all kind of rebelled against that because we were so used to going out and just letting go and escaping from this parenthood journey. And no wonder relationships fail at that point, because it is such a huge change. So it's so interesting to hear that you also went through that from the male perspective. I find that fascinating.
Yeah, it was really tough for me actually, and I felt so guilty about it. But I suppose the only thing I could say is that I've made up for it since then. And if his mum was next to me now, she would say, you know, Dave's been a brilliant dad. And I think, well, if I had have stayed there, what would be the quality of his upbringing then? Because we just didn't get on. But I think a lot of the reason we didn't get on because I loved that culture and she hated it, you know. And really, in hindsight, we were chalk and cheese, because she was a holiday rep and she didn't drink, and she was done with that and wanted to come back and settle down. Where I was 30 when George was born.
Was she older than you then, Dave? I was wondering about the ages.
Yeah, I was 30 and she was 79. So
I thought you'd like an older lady. Yeah. Good on you. We all love an older lady.
Yeah.
So she'd given up 20 years ago, had she?
That was it, yeah. Well, so her teeth were falling out and she kept dribbling it out, so it didn't work really. But no, it was, yeah, she was older than me. And also, it was never part of her sort of upbringing either, so it was quite different. But it's interesting because now I don't drink. I can see how it must have been for her back then, you know, giving birth to a lovely baby and thinking that everything's great. And I'm still coming in from the pub, falling asleep when George was crying. And it must have been really, really difficult for her, you know.
But I suppose this was just going to be your path and you had to get this out of your system because you wouldn't be where you are now without that whole period of you drinking up until, 4 or 5 years ago when you stopped.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just part of it, isn't it? It's two different people with two different paths. And unfortunately, sometimes those paths don't intertwine. They come together and sometimes come apart again. And that's actually okay. I just think that's part of life. And we do feel a lot of guilt and shame about those situations. But as you say, you've been an amazing dad, and I just think it's you can't have shame about these things because it is part of our
I think
life.
it's when you look back at these things you think, God, why wasn't that a turning point for me? Why did having a son not stop me drinking at the time? And I think we all look back and we see these big things that have happened in our world and we think, why didn't that stop me drinking? Why wasn't that my turning point? And some massive things have happened and it should have stopped us, but if it wasn't our time to stop and we weren't ready, it wasn't going to happen, was it?
No, Lucy always said she needed to literally a doctor to say to you, you need to go on a dialysis machine because your kidney and liver and everything is about to die. That was the only way that you would have.
Yeah, well, I hoped. That's what I got
yeah.
to the point where I hoped that somebody would tell me there's something wrong with your liver. If you don't stop drinking, you're going to die. Because I honestly thought that was the only way it was going to stop me, because I'd been through all sorts of life-changing and wonderful things. I'd had 2 kids as well. Why wasn't that my turning point? It just wasn't. Having a child is such a massive thing, but sometimes it just isn't enough to stop you drinking if you're that hooked on it.
I think it's a really important conversation, actually, because listening to you then, I was, the old cogs were turning, and I think it highlights how much of an internal battle it is in your life, isn't it? Because we look in hindsight now, we've stopped drinking and we think, why this, why not? But at the time, we got all this stuff going on, and you evolve, don't you? And I feel
you do.
Yeah, I feel like I was 54, so 3 years that I stopped drinking, like nearly. But I wasn't ready at any point before that at all, and I think I tried to moderate, which lasted about 2 days. Because Em said to me, look, why don't we just share a bottle of wine? And I knew I had to do something about my drinking because it was ridiculous. So I thought, well, that's better than nothing. But actually it wasn't, because when I had probably 3/4 of a bottle of that wine, that was just like leading me up the garden path, because then I was worse than if I'd have had none. So after 2 days, I started smuggling it in again. And then Em was like, oh, you seem really drunk again, yet we've only had half a bottle. And it's like my demon voice, hello. I hid 2 bottles under the bed. So, and then I thought, well, moderation is completely out for me. And then I realised that there was only one way out, and that still took a while for me to get my head around that.
For those of you that are giving sobriety a go this Sober October, we hope you're doing well. Isn't it just brilliant not having hangovers?
To celebrate your momentous month of being alcohol-free, Sober Awkward has reactivated the Liars promo code SOBER20. Woohoo!
Liars have opened up this deal to our listeners in the USA, the UK and here in Australia. Just go to their website and add this code SOBER20 at checkout.
Liars have also launched a loyalty program in Australia, so everyone can join and be rewarded for shopping with them.
They've also built a brand new swanky page for mixology classes, so anyone who purchases can enjoy a complimentary lesson. Lucy and I loved learning how to mix up some of their mocktails on there. It was a right laugh, wasn't it, Lucy?
Yeah, it was.
I had no idea that alcohol-free drinks could be so yummy.
And it's nice to feel like we're still getting a treat.
Yeah, definitely. For more information, go to lyres, that's lyres.com.au. Yeah, we did an episode on risk where Lucy and I list all the ridiculous things that have happened in our lives that have made us not stop drinking. And it took us until we were in our mid-40s, both of us, until we stopped. It's amazing how many red flags are sort of flying in front of us, but we just, because it's so normalised and so ingrained, there's not actually any other option. I never felt like there was an option for me to stop, because why would I want to be that person that I hate, because I hated sober people so much. And that's one of my huge regrets that I talk about so much, is that I had a real problem with sober people because they could remember my behaviour when I couldn't. So therefore, I never wanted to be that boring sober person. But now, obviously, as you say, we evolve. And I think it has a lot to do with maturity and age as well. Like, I had to get to a point where I was mature and old enough to understand what I was doing to myself wasn't great. So yeah, it does come with age. At what point did your drinking become a problem, Dave? When did you start to recognise and see those red flags?
Well, in my 30s, I didn't look at it as a problem because I was in full party mode, so it used to be, I ended up calling it the loser's arms in the end, because I realised that a lot of them weren't my friends.
Right.
But I bought a house which was about 3 miles away from the pub, and it's like a beautiful old, I'm going to make you jealous again now. It's a beautiful old cottage, 18th century cottage with 2 open fireplaces, and the garden backed onto the woods, and it was south facing, so you could sit in the garden all day with the sun on your face. And I'd become a solitary drinker then, because I knew I couldn't really drive to the pub, because I wouldn't even really have one because of drinking and driving, which is ironic because every morning I was well over the limit. But so I started drinking indoors. And then I really began to love that. I would have a lock-in. So Friday afternoon, I used to finish early, get me a big trolley, fill it up with chicken and flipping vodka, Stellas, cider, wine boxes, the lot. Go in and not come out till Monday morning. I wouldn't talk to anyone. I wouldn't text anyone in case they would ring me. And I loved it, but I literally did that for 10 years. And I've completely don't remember my 40s, and that devastates me. Like, it seems like a complete blur. But the thing is, though, I was not accountable to anyone, like not one person. So I ended up drinking a litre of vodka a night, nearly every night. But weekends, I would start lunchtime, because in my head, the pub's opened at 12 or 11 or whatever, so it's all right. Drink a few beers, watch the sport, fall asleep, wake up, and then hit the vodka. And then pass in and out of consciousness until it was dark, and then get up the next day, start again, and then fully function on the Monday. Well, not fully function, but until Monday night. And I did that for 10 years. And then I was asked to go on a TV show. You must know 60 Minute Makeover, right?
Yeah, well, I used to watch it. I remember talking to you about it before, Dave, and I used to watch it, and I used to think, my God, those people are so hungover.
Yeah,
you could tell. You could tell, but everyone on it was hungover.
Well, the thing is with that is that I had been a recluse for 10 years. So when I went for the interview, I went to ITV, and there's all these bouncing around girls in their 20s. Oh, Dave. Yeah. And I got the job. And when I went there, I thought, I don't know how to socialise. This is a nightmare. But after a few beers, they realised I was a lad, and I fitted in. And I spent years like going to hotels after the shoot and getting pissed. And one night, there was a producer that would come from Hollyoaks, right? And he was a bit of a lad. He looked like Paul Weller. And our rounds were a bottle of wine each. So it wasn't like a round of beers, it was a round of a bottle of wine.
Wow.
I remember that night I drank 4 bottles of wine, right, until about 3 a.m. And the next morning we had to get up at 6, and I could hear this like tapping sound, like, and it got louder and louder and louder. And then it was, Dave, Dave. and it was one of the guys from the show, and I'd never got up late or anything. And I remember I got in the van, and I was absolutely drunk driving to this makeover, and it was in old people's home, like
how awful.
and it was in the summer, and it was about, they had the heating on as well, and there must have been 100 people in this room, because it wasn't a house, it was like where they all sat and did their games and whatever, and it was stick down carpet. It was the worst scenario in the whole world I could have had, and all day I was literally hanging out of my own arse. Yeah, that night we're straight on it again, and it goes round and round and round, right? So it was all part of the crack. But then one day we went into Wandsworth and did this makeover, and it was beautiful road and whatever. It was a little close, actually. And at the end of the day, Peter Andre went over to the car, and this lovely blonde girl got out and walked past me, and I've nudged me mate Rob and gone, Jesus Christ, she's lovely. And that was that. But then 3 months later, when the show was aired on ITV, randomly I went on Twitter, and the woman that we did the makeover for, had tweeted something about the makeover. So I'm sitting there in my pants, right? And I said,
I'm picturing it.
Yeah, I said, "Oh, hi, Emma. I'm the carpet guy from the show. I'm with all the crew now, just to let you know that this was the best makeover that we've done this year. Blah, blah." Well, I was on my own, half a bottle of vodka down in my pants, with my hair sticking up in the air, and I painted this picture that I was in this huge conference room with this huge screen. And we got chatting on Twitter and that, and then it wasn't long before we exchanged numbers and we arranged a date, right? And then time went on a little bit, and she said, "Oh, should we meet Saturday?" My main thought wasn't, "Oh yeah, I can't wait to meet with. Where can we meet so I can have a few drinks?"
Yeah,
Because
definitely.
it's
Yeah.
like 10 miles away. And that was kind of wrong anyway. But on the Friday, it was Christmas jumper day. And I just, I know it's random, isn't it? It's,
How come you remember that?
well, I'll tell you why I remember it. And you're going to, oh, I see. I said,
Because you were wearing a Christmas jumper.
It's probably sick on it.
my Christmas pants, right? I sent her a message and I said, "Send me a picture of your Christmas jumper." And I come out with a class line, so I really do.
You do, yeah.
You're not going to win anyone, though, isn't it? There's
Yeah, no
all
wonder.
these out there going, "Oh, Dave, you absolute scally."
Show us your jumper.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look at him and his father.
No,
Christmas
it
and
gets
reindeer
serious
jumper.
now, right? It gets serious, right? So I didn't hear all day, nothing. And I just let it go. So I went home, and it was Friday, my usual Friday lock-in, and I'm half bottle of vodka down, a few Stellas and whatever sitting there. And she texts back and said, "Oh, hi, sorry I haven't been in touch. I've been at the hospital all day." And I said, "Oh, okay, are you all right?" And she said, "No, I'm not actually. My cancer's come back."
Wow.
And I looked at it and I was like, Jesus, because that's the reason why we did the makeover the first time, because I mean, it's a long story, it's a whole other podcast, but she had triplets, right, with IVF, and she got breast cancer 6 months later, and her partner left as well. So it's how she survived those first 5 years, and that they wrote into the show, and they got on the show, and that's how we met, but there's me in my drunken state texting for 2 or 3 hours thinking, I hope she doesn't call because I'm going to be drunk on the thing. But we arranged to meet the next day in the morning, and she actually come over to the house. And I remember, and she, even to this day now, she doesn't know why she did that, because she didn't even know me, but it was almost like she was in such a state over the news that she'd received. So she come over to the house and went into my kitchen, and I made a cup of tea and that. And she, to this day, she said, "I remember your hands were really shaking."
Right, she didn't really realise the extent of your drinking until that point.
No, and I don't know how she didn't smell it on me, because I I must have stank of booze and that. Anyway, we spent the day together. And it was a real special connection because, she's just such a lovely person,
Yeah.
And it was a few days later that she was having chemo, and that was kind of one of our first dates, and that's how we got to know each other. By sitting there all day in the chemo ward, she had the cold cap on, all these tubes coming out. But I remember one specific time, right, that I had to get the bus to the hospital because I was so hungover the next morning. I thought, if I get pulled up, I'm going to prison because I walked into the ward and I was late, and she's sitting there with her cold cap on and the tubes coming out. And I looked at her and I gave her a hug, and I thought, what am I doing?
Yeah.
There's this beautiful woman who's fallen in love with me, desperately clutching onto life. And there's me, I'm just killing myself. It was a real moment for me. And I just felt so terrible all day thinking about it. And it was awful, But that was at the beginning of our relationship, And she recovered from the cancer. She didn't lose too much hair. And it was a few months after that we were out in Harrogate having a chat, and we were talking about her house, my house, and we decided if I sold my house, then the money I got from that, we could extend hers. And it was all like this huge dream. I sold my house in 6 weeks. In that 6 weeks, I thought, I have to sort my drinking out because I can't. I'd hid it from her so well. I can't go into this new life with the woman I love with this drinking problem.
Yeah.
Every single day I failed, and I thought, I'd do it tomorrow. I'd do it tomorrow. I'd do it tomorrow. We had a completion date and a moving out date, and the Friday before we had dinner at my house, and out of the blue I said to her, I've got something to tell you.
Yeah.
And she said, what is it? What is it? And I said, I think I'm a functioning alcoholic, right? And it was like she put her fingers in her ears, and she's like, la, 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 la. And it was just deadly silence. And she said, okay, all right, well, we deal with that, blah, blah. And we didn't talk about it after that. And I moved in the week later, and it was a nightmare. I'd cold most of my life. And I thought, I'm literally going cold turkey here. I haven't planned for this whatsoever. And the first 2 or 3 days I didn't have a drink. It was a nightmare. And then gradually, it was the weekend, and I said, oh, should we get some wine? And I gradually started introducing alcohol into the house. And after 2 or 3 months, that's when she started to see that actually this isn't what I thought it was.
So what was the turning point there? What actually did you have to have a discussion and say, right, we actually need to do something about this? How did you manage to stop, Dave?
Oh God, that's right down the road. That was like it was. I introduced wine in. She started drinking more, and you know what the statistics around alcohol and breast cancer is. But because I was drinking more, she was drinking more. Then we were having friends over, and she said, I'm going to go and get the shop in and get the wine in. And she would get like 2 bottles of wine for 6 people. And I said, no, I'll go, I get it, and come back with 2 cases of wine, a case of Stella, and some Prosecco or something, It used to cost me a fortune, but just so I could feed myself. And then we started really, really arguing, falling out. There was some real rock bottoms. I went missing for 4 days in Eastbourne. Some people already know the story, but I slept rough for 4 days.
Wow.
I drank all day in the pub. I must have drank 15, 16 pints of Stella. Bought a bottle of vodka from the co-op and went and sat on the beach. And I don't know how I survived that. Came back, still wasn't enough for me to stop drinking. And it wasn't until the Christmas after, a few months after, that she walked in my office and she just looked shattered. And she said, I don't think I can do this anymore. And that really hurt me, like to see her after all she had been through in her life. It really made a mark in me. And after Christmas, I just thought, I've got to sort this out, And January the 7th, 2019, a friend texted me down the road and he said, how would you feel about joining me in stopping drinking alcohol for 3 months to see how your marriage is, your health, and
Okay.
your quality of life and that. And I had a hangover, of course I did. And I laughed. I thought I couldn't give up 3 days, but it trickled in. It was weird. It just trickled in all
It
day.
was like perfect timing, sort
It
of, from
was
that guy to send you
serendipity,
that
right?
message. Yeah.
So,
Absolute
so what
serendipity.
I'm hearing here, Dave, is that you had a child with somebody, and that wasn't enough for you to stop drinking. You met another amazing woman who didn't drink, and you saw her going through this horrific chemo, and that wasn't enough to stop you drinking. And so a number of things happened in your world. And, from anyone looking from the outside, they'd be like, why wasn't that enough? But of course, you were caught up in the addiction that the three of us understand. And that's why you couldn't stop when those momentous things were happening in your world. But then this guy says to you, hey, let's have a period of being sober. And you decide to go with it.
It's like the hand of God, isn't it? Reaching out of a cloud and grabbing hold of you. Sometimes
No,
you
it
just
is.
need
But
that.
you know what I believe? There's such a thing as spontaneous sobriety. And I think Annie Grace's dad did that. He was drinking a bottle of whiskey a day and then just gave up. But I believe it's more than that, because I've been thinking about it for a long time. So when I tried to moderate and it didn't work, I realised at that point that it was all or nothing for me. It was just carry on and kill myself, or I'd have to stop. And as soon as I realised that, it then took a few months more than that for me to get my head around it. And it was, I suppose, it was the perfect timing for me then that I got that message. And I often
And
wonder
your friend sort of stepped in at that point and said, hey, let's do this period sober, and the timing was right for you. And the reason that I just wanted to interrupt, and I'm sorry that I did, is that it's so similar to my meeting of Vic. I was exactly the same. Loads and loads of really big things happened in my world that should have stopped me drinking, and they didn't. But then one day I just met one person, but I was actually so ready to stop drinking that it was that actually really was the turning point for me. So the turning point actual thing was not as big as all that. It wasn't some massive event. It was just meeting somebody. So something quite similar to you. Somebody just said, let's try this sober thing. And that was the turning point. You were so ready. And it was another guy who was obviously struggling with his drinking as well, because...
Well, you say that, but he wasn't really a drinker. And I didn't know
he
that.
wasn't.
So I think he had just seen them on the common one day looking really, really like bedraggled from my drinking.
Right,
and
yeah.
he knew that I was having a problem with it. And I just think he had the intuition to message me, and it was the right timing. But you know what's even more interesting is that a few days later, we had an appointment at the hospital because she had a lump appear in another place, and she was re-diagnosed with cancer for the 3rd time.
Wow. So there's a lot going on in that period, isn't it?
Yeah.
And of course, that is a perfect excuse for you to get stuck back into the booze again.
Well, or to go either way, either to say,
Yeah.
right, that is it, I'm done with drinking, I'm going to be there for her, or to carry on drinking and numb it all out because it's too much to handle. So there you have this fork in the path. And it makes it particularly hard and very hard as a man. I mean, this is where obviously we come from a women and mummy point of view with the drinking, but do you think it's harder for men to speak out about addiction and mental health? Do you think that was part of the struggle for you, basically being male?
It was never a struggle for me because I've always been an open book. And although, like, when I was young, I was really easily led by the group up the shops where we were buying the beer, and the group that put me on a bus with them and had the tattoo and that. I was always quite independent, I think, from my 20s. And I've never really worried about, what men think of me. And When I look at my Instagram, right, 84% of my followers are women. And yeah, I look like George Clooney. Come on, let's face it, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, you do.
Especially in those sunnies the other day.
I was just
Or is
saying
it
to
George
Vic.
Clooney? Yeah. But anyway, the fact
Silver
is, right,
fox.
women
Yeah.
definitely talk about it more. And I'll give you another example, right? So I'm a grey area drinking coach, and I did a post the other day about 5 signs of grey area drinking. And in all the comments that I got, there was one man that related to that, and the rest were women. And the reason I think that is because men bury their, and I have to say as well, not all men, but the majority of men bury their head in the sand about stuff like that.
They do.
And more men reach a rock bottom before they stop. Before women, they're mothers, and they put other things in the equation like their children, their health, and stuff like that before it gets to that stage. So I think it's a problem, but I think there's more and more of us speaking out now about mental health, about being okay to talk about it. And you see my Instagram, I talk about anything and I don't care.
Well, I know that's why you're so relatable, and that's why, your voice resonates with so many, because there aren't many men out there. I've just got a little stat here. It says in Australia, the number of suicide deaths is approximately 3 times higher in males than in females, and men are more likely to die because of alcohol and drug use than women. So the stats show that men are less likely to actively take steps to access the services or professional help because they're embarrassed, because of stigma, and because they seem weak. It's so culturally ingrained, and pub culture and everything. What advice would you give someone, Dave, who is stuck in that grey area drinking right now, like we all were at some point? I call it my Pinot Gris purgatory, that place where we feel like we had a problem, but we are not brave enough to tell anyone about it or even mention the word alcoholic. What would you say to someone?
I think it's so different now. I mean, even 10 years ago, you had AA, and I think there's so much more help out there now. There's so many communities like NACOA for children of alcoholics. There's so many organisations that you could get online resources from. There's Facebook groups, there's things like this, podcasts. But reach out. I think the main thing is to not feel like you're alone with this. And you're right about the shame and stigma. I mean, I'm working alongside Sarah Drage now, who lost her dad. He was 2 years older than me, and she had to turn his life support machine off. And that she believes he died because of the shame and stigma surrounding the word alcoholic.
Gosh,
and, I'm really working hard to change that alongside Alcohol Change UK. We're doing a big campaign soon to try and stop that. We're trying to stop sober shaming as well, which I'm guilty of. You're probably guilty of.
Yeah, definitely.
And raise awareness, but it's reaching out, honestly. And I get that post I did the other day about grey area drinking, I had so many DMs. And that's how men reach out to me, actually, privately. But if that's a start, that's okay, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, just giving people that platform to start from is amazing. I loved that episode with Sarah Drage. I did listen to that. And I loved the way it was a different perspective, because sometimes, we're talking about us being in the situation and being big drinkers, but it was lovely to hear from someone from a different point of view who's experienced. And I also listened to your one, the guy from Emmerdale last week as well. I can't remember his name, but
Liam,
that was a brilliant Liam, yeah. His perspective as well about his father that was also a huge drinker. It was so interesting to hear not only the stories of people, but also how drinking affects families and how it affects communities and how it all leads on. And I really believe that Lucy and I, the reason we do this podcast as well and talk to people like you is because we're trying to change the cycle. Like you, we're trying to speak up about it and hope that when we talk, people will understand that you don't have to do this. This isn't a path you have to take. I know it seems like an obligatory thing to do when you're socializing is to drink, but actually you don't have to, and you can say no. And the only way we're going to get this message out there is by talking about it and being honest about it and doing exactly what you're doing, Dave, and really getting this message out there. So we really admire you for that.
And it's really great. It's great having you on here talking to us as well, because when we started this podcast, we really just put something out there sort of almost as a little confessional for us to share all the awful things that we've done in our lives. But we do get a lot of people contact us as well, and we were surprised that quite a few of them were men as well. We weren't expecting that at all. We thought we'd have a all female following just because of who we are, but we love the fact that we've got men who write in and talk to us and are listening. And does it matter whether we're men or women? You know, we all need help, because we all know how helpless we are when we're stuck in that situation where we can't bloody stop drinking.
Yeah, and everybody suffers at the same level. It doesn't matter what, what sex you are, what gender you are, or where you come from. It's all the same level of suffering, isn't it? And we're all finding it difficult to get out of it. And I think podcasts like this hopefully will help people. What's it like, Dave, being the sober version of you now?
It's bloody great, to be honest, and I mean that, because I'm a deep thinker, and I think that was part of the reason I drank. I was an overthinker with everything when I was drinking, so you can imagine what I'm like now. But I philosophise about a lot of things, and you say about getting a message out there. I think you saw that I was asked to do a talk in a college last week, and I invited Sarah to join me.
I saw that. Yeah.
And so it's in front of 200 students in the morning, 200 in the afternoon, and the message was exactly what you said then, Vic, about being comfortable enough to say no, right?
Yes.
And to not go along with the crowd, and to. If you don't want to drink, you don't have to drink. And the response was incredible. The head teacher said she'd never seen them stay so quiet throughout a talk. But at the end, the DMs I got from the students after, and some were coming from the perspective of their parents' drink, right? And this girl come up to me, and I'd set her down. She was really, really tearful. And she said, I don't know what to do. My dad locks himself in his bedroom every single night because my mum was unfaithful to him, and he just drinks wine, and I don't know how to approach him. So I discussed the options of maybe getting him out of the house, taking the dog for a walk, and just coming from a compassionate angle and just saying, Dad, look, I'm really worried, and from that way, because for a man to think he's probably hurting his daughter is devastating, but when you're locked into that world of numbing your emotions every single night, sometimes you forget about that, don't you? You're wrapped up in your own world. You can be quite selfish, really. But it made me really, really think that us talking about it as much as we can and reaching out, like your podcast has incredible downloads, mine's doing okay, and online conversations, having these safe spaces available for people to reach out to, takes you off that desert island where you feel like you're on your own with this and no one will understand. Right? And that is so important, because once you start the conversation going, that can change not just that person's life, but everyone's lives around them as well.
Yeah, and I think it's great to be honest about what sobriety is really like. Like me and Lucy and you, we're not saying it's fucking brilliant all the time. We're saying it can be really hard and it can be really shit, and we do get lonely, and sometimes we feel isolated and stuff, don't we? Especially Lucy's, struggling socially, aren't you, Lucy?
Yeah, I do. I never go out, but that's okay. That's why I actually don't really want to go out. So that's just something I'm learning about myself.
Yeah.
But to say that, sobriety is and we were talking about it on the podcast the other day, and it came to me then, it's not about living the same life that you're living now, not drinking, without the booze. It's about living a completely different life, and you can't really imagine what that is until you step into it. But I just wanted to say to you, Dave, as well, I totally get how school kids would listen to what you say, don't you reckon, Vic? He's so relatable, like this London lad standing up, just talking. Obviously you look like George Clooney swoony, so all the girls were probably swooning. So you had both the, you had both sexes listening in and probably hanging on your every word. But that's what I mean. We need real normal people like the three of us. We're nothing special. We're just normal people who have struggled with alcohol for a huge part of our life. But against all the odds, we came out of it, and we just want to tell people how we did it. And I can get why a school full of kids would listen to you.
Yeah, actually,
I think they were scared shitless. Actually, that's the truth.
It threatened them beforehand.
Were you shouting at them?
And a knife in his back
just
pocket.
got my guns out, and
he's got his tattoo out, his skull tattoo. So,
look at this.
Terrifying.
Yeah. I think I appreciate your honesty, Dave, because I think that's one thing is like for me and Lucy, like we want to talk in an honest way about this and say, look, sometimes we're shit parents, sometimes we're shit at most things we do, like sometimes we're just rubbish people, but it doesn't mean to say that we are failures, and it doesn't mean to say that our lives aren't enriched by our sobriety, which they definitely are, aren't they, Lucy?
Yeah, they really are. And that's with the podcast. It was just about saying, let's just get on there and start talking. We didn't really make any plans. We just started talking, and we thought if we make mistakes, we're not going to edit stuff. We're just going to be two people talking.
Two idiots shooting the shit. I said shit, haven't I?
Now there's three of us.
But that's the best way, because with my podcast, right, when you came on mine, Vic, I never plan anything. I've had Andy Ramage on yesterday, and I sat in a chair and he came on, and I thought, right, let's just have a chat. It works better that way.
It does.
It's more organic.
I'd just like to say to our listeners as well, because your podcast that I listened to, the one with your wife, that's a really interesting one for people to listen to if they've got a partner who doesn't drink and they're trying not to drink. So anyone who is struggling with that, and it's something we'd like to talk about in more detail, to listen to Sober Dave's podcast with his wife and how they got through that battle where you were a drinker and she wasn't. I thought it was such a brilliant listen, and I did cry. In fact, what Vic does is she senses my mood, and then she'll send me a podcast link. So if she knows I'm a bit emotional, she'll send me a podcast to make me cry. And it worked with this one.
I just feel like you need to let your emotions go, Lucy. Just let it all out.
When I finished listening, I phoned her straight up in tears,
blubbing
saying,
like an idiot she was.
Oh wow. And there was so much about that was just so brilliant. And just both of you being so open, I think is a great thing for people to listen to, and to see that all of our stories are just so similar at the end of the day.
They're all the same. One of the emails we get a lot, Dave, on the podcast is from people who are in that situation. It's one of my most common questions, isn't it? It's like, how do I give up drinking when my partner still drinks? And we always say the same thing. This is a solo mission. Like, you have to take hold of your responsibility for your life. Was it like that for you, Dave, with you and Em? Did you have to go, right, this is actually something I've got to do? It's great to have the support of somebody, of course, but actually this is something you have to do on your own. Did you find that?
100%. I mean, if she'd have come into my office that day and said, you need to stop drinking, I think that would have had a completely different impact on me than when she said, I don't think I can do this anymore.
Yeah, exactly. And really interestingly, she does say later on that if you had have carried on drinking, she probably couldn't have coped. She probably would have walked, didn't she?
Well, she wouldn't have walked. She'd have made me walk.
You would have stumbled in those days.
Yeah.
But again, it's that timing thing, isn't it? That timing, the timing was right. She was coming to the end of, she couldn't manage it anymore. And you were just so ready. You'd had enough. You were done drinking. The time was right for you to give up.
How is Em? Is she all right? She's all in remission and everything for a while now?
Yeah, she has aftercare treatment every 3 weeks for the rest of her life. But I say to her, it's like having your MOT every 3 weeks, because she has her bloods taken and they can monitor her, And it's a bit of a pain because she can't have visitors, so she goes there on her own every 3 weeks.
Oh, gosh, because of COVID. Yeah, gosh, that's awful.
Great. And she ran the marathon 2 weeks ago.
Wow.
Where she smashed that. I was a bit tired because I met her 3 different parts of the marathon.
Had to get the bus, did you?
Standing on the platform, draining.
Poor you.
But no, she's good. She's good, and she's got lots of things. She's incredibly inspirational, isn't she? So
Yeah,
she's
she's
got lots of
amazing.
things.
Yeah, everybody follow Limitless M on Instagram.
Yeah,
She's
yeah.
got
Yeah.
her own incredible story as well. We
Well,
just
they're all
want to,
going to follow me after this.
Yeah, but they will, of course.
Of course.
Now we said George Clooney, they'll be flocking.
oh, they're
to
going to
us.
be disappointed, aren't they?
No, I think they're all going to unfollow me.
We always say that, Lucy and I. It's funny, you see all these photographs on Instagram of before and after, like when I was drinking and when I'm sober. And for Lucy and I always say, well, actually, I've got uglier. I'm going to be one of those women that just looks more and more like Les Dawson as I get older. I'm sort of reverting into Les Dawson with
Les Dennis, both of you.
Yeah, I've got, that is what we're like. Les Dawson and Les Dennis. That is like spot on. I know. So, yeah, I reckon if people see us, if we ever go into TV, Lucy, I mean, I think we've both got a good face for radio, but I don't know.
We definitely
Is that why I can't see you on this podcast then?
That's because we're hidden in the booth. Yeah, we're hidden in the booth because Dave, Alan, the sound guy, can't bear to look at our hideous faces anymore.
I just might mention here that at the moment, Alan, the sound guy, is standing outside the booth.
I can't believe Becky still came in with her nightie on. I mean, no wonder she don't go out.
I was doing these up Mother Brown for you. Alan, come in and say hello. This is our grumpy sound guy.
He's got a massive bit of cardboard that he's waving around to cool us down.
Alan, what temperature? What temperature is it out there?
Or in here? Do you know the temperature in the booth?
Is it?
We're in subtropical Queensland in a little booth. It is so hot. He's got a massive bit of cardboard that he's fanning us with. That's how professional we are.
It sounds like we're in southeast London or somewhere, but actually we're in tropical Queensland recording this, which is ever so weird. But yeah, I know, it's so weird, isn't it?
Well, you know,
Dave,
Alan, fan.
Alan, the sound guy's from Brighton as well. So yeah, we're all
good.
Brits abroad. We just want to say thank you, Dave, for, just being Dave. Your daily updates and insight into sober living really are the flathead screwdriver in a lot of people's sober toolboxes.
Yeah, they are. And I'm gonna make a point of listening to more of your podcasts. And I don't listen to anyone, so hopefully you'll be pleased with that, because I just love that one with you.
Thank you. We're season 3's out now, and there's some amazing guests on this season as well. You know, I'm trying to vary it around, and I've even got a guy who's in his early 20s that I've come across. And he's in Australia, actually.
Oh, great.
He lives in Australia.
What's his name?
I don't know.
I'll put you on the spot, yeah.
Can't remember. Hey, is anyone else?
His name's Charlie, but his account is aimed at younger guys.
Okay, that is so needed here.
At, like changing your mindset around things. Don't go along with a crowd. Don't bow to peer pressure.
Okay.
And that's why I've asked him to come on, because I'm trying to get the message out to all age groups, all genders, whatever, you know, and whether they drink or not. Cherry Healy came on last week and she still drinks. So it's not all about you have to be sober.
It's this mindful, being mindful about it, I guess.
It's mindful drinking. It's, you know, so that's what I want to aim at. And if anyone's interested as well, me and them did a film last Tuesday for Alcohol Change UK about relationships and drinking, and that's going to be released around the Alcohol Awareness Week, which is in the 15th to the 22nd of November, but I think they're releasing the film just before that. We have no idea what it looks like because we were interviewed separately, so God knows what she said about me. But I tell you what, I know what I said about her.
Oh, we'll look forward to that. Send us the details of that, Dave. We'll put it on our Instagram page as well.
Vic will share it.
Yeah. There's lots in the pipeline. I'm sure there are for you. And thank you for flying me out to Oz in a month's time to join you.
It does feel like you're nearby.
Yeah, I appreciate the first class ticket you've got me. One way.
Sorry, the next guest will have too high expectations.
Exactly. We haven't worked out. I've left Vic in charge of podcast guests, and we've had 2 English guys on so far. So she's obviously got a fetish.
My type.
She's got a fetish for English. She married one as well.
Yeah.
So
I know. You miss the accent, don't you, Vic?
Yeah, I do.
But it's been great. I love your accent, and it's great to chat with you. It's taken a trip down memory lane, but also wonderful to hear your story, because I know that it will help so many people, and we can't wait to see where your journey takes you next. It's been an honour, Dave, to have you as a guest on our podcast today.
Yeah, and we've got a quick book. We've got a quick book recommendation, Dave. What's your, just so our listeners know, what is your recommendation for the best sober book at the moment?
Well, do you know what? I've got so many books, but Catherine Gray's on my podcast next week, Wednesday, and she's amazing. I love her. We had such a laugh on our podcast, and her new book, Sunshine, Warm, Sober, is brilliant. And she's a bit of a science geek like myself, so there's lots of information around the disease theory.
Okay, yeah,
which
great.
is really interesting, but there's lots of tips, and it's for people as well who have stopped drinking for quite a while, and it's the next phase, which is really, really interesting as well. So that's my tip.
Okay, brilliant. That's Sunshine, Warm, Sober by Catherine Gray.
Yeah,
we always end our podcast on a little quote, and usually me and Lucy dithering around, doing nothing, trying to work out why we can't. Arguing. But we've got a quote by Barack Obama, which I thought was relevant for this podcast. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask for help when you need it. I do that every day. Asking for help isn't a sign of weakness. It's a sign of strength. It shows you have the courage to admit when you don't know something and to learn something new. So, yeah, that's a great one from Barack Obama. Yeah, it's a lovely one. Yeah, and it just shows as well, like for men, there are people out there like you, and especially that guy you're interviewing in their 20s, you know, that they need representation, and that's what we're all trying to do, is just resonate with people and get your attention and say, look, there's no shame here. We've all done shitty, crazy things, haven't we? We've all been mental. We've all showed our knickers to policemen. Lucy, have you showed your knickers to a policeman?
No, of course I haven't. No, I'm sorry. I was off thinking about the young guy that Dave's going to podcast. Do you think we could get him on our podcast? Because I don't mind having a nice young man on our podcast.
Oh, young man.
Oh, at your age.
I will send you the details, because he needs to be known about his.
And thank you, Dave, because that's what we're doing. We're just doing this to share the information. So for me, because I haven't spoken to you or had communication with you before, because I've been off doing my own business, and this is just something I do on the side, just a podcast with Vic. It's been just such a pleasure to chat to you. You're just brilliant. So thank you for everything that you're doing.
Thanks, Dave.
Can I just finish off with an important message I'd like to add is you're never, ever too old to change your life, right? And I was drinking for over 40 years, and by stopping drinking has changed everything for me. And it's easy to think, oh, I've been doing it for 40 years, there's no point changing, but there is absolutely 100%. Doesn't matter how old you are, you can change your life.
That is a brilliant message to end with. We're going to add all Dave's links into the show notes, but you can follow him at Sober Dave on Instagram, and his website is David Wilson. Is that right?
No.
Go on, tell me.
It's www.davidwilsoncoaching.com.
You can tell how old you are. You're not meant to say the www thing anymore. Did you not know that?
No.
You just gave away your age.
I'm going down the allotment now. Come on, this one.
Check on the potatoes.
I need to look at the cabbages, love.
Go and pick your carrots. Cheers, Dave.
Cheers, Dave. Bye.
Bye, mate. Thank you for listening to the Sober Awkward podcast.
If alcohol is affecting your life in a negative way, if you're struggling to moderate or your hangovers are causing anxiety, it might be time to reach out for help. Contact your local doctor, a therapist, or connect with your local AA or sobriety group. Vic's got one.
Yes, go onto Facebook and just search Drunk Mummy, Sober Mummy, the group. Lucy and I both agree that even though this journey can be awkward, it's definitely worth it. And if we can do it, you can too.
For more support on sobriety, head to Vic's website, drunkmummysobermummy.com.
And Lucy runs an online space to support and inspire single mums. Find out more at beanstalkmums.com.au. Finally, if you've enjoyed the Sober Awkward podcast, don't forget to follow, subscribe, review, and share it with your mates.
Don't make it sound like they have to, though.
No, they do have to. I'm not doing all this for nothing, Lucy.
No.